In the hierarchy of werewolf packs, alphas rule with dominance and power, warriors protect with strength and skill, and omegas? Omegas serve in silence, their gifts often overlooked, their voices rarely heard. But sometimes the most powerful bonds form between the most unlikely pairs. Sometimes the strongest protector isn't the fiercest warrior, and sometimes what the world calls broken is simply waiting for the right moment to become whole. This is the story of Prince Rowan, the heir no one could control, and Lyra, the Omega no one wanted. Two fractured souls who found in each other the missing pieces they'd been searching for all along. This is the Broken Omega's Prince. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the halls of Bloodmoon Keep, followed by a roar that made the servants scatter and the guards tense at their posts. Prince Rowan Bloodmoon was having another episode. In the grand chamber that served as his quarters, the heir to the Bloodmoon pack stood amidst the wreckage of what had once been priceless furniture, his chest heaving, his eyes flickering between human brown and wolf gold. Around him lay the unconscious form of his latest protector, a decorated warrior named Cyrus, who'd lasted exactly 3 days before Rowan's unstable wolf had lashed out. "Your Highness," the voice came from the doorway, measured and cold. Alpha King Aldrich Bloodmoon, Rowan's father, surveyed the destruction with barely concealed disappointment. "That's the 7th protector this month." "I didn't ask for a protector," Rowan ground out, fighting to keep his wolf contained. Inside him, the beast thrashed and snarled, demanding release, demanding blood, demanding something he couldn't name or control. "Your condition," Rowan said, his voice tight, "is exactly why I can't have protectors. Every time someone gets close, every time I start to trust, the wolf—" He cut himself off, hands clenching into fists. "I won't be responsible for another death." Aldrich's expression softened fractionally. "The incident with Marcus wasn't your fault. You were only 15 and he provoked—" "He was my friend," the words came out raw, "and I tore out his throat because my wolf decided he was a threat. Don't tell me it wasn't my fault." 4 years had passed since that night, but the memory was seared in Rowan's mind. Marcus had been the only person who'd treated the prince like a normal person instead of a ticking bomb. They'd been sparring, just friendly competition, when Rowan's wolf had surged forward with murderous intent, seeing rivalry where there was only friendship. Marcus had survived, barely, but he'd left Bloodmoon territory the moment he could walk, and Rowan had never seen him again. Since then, Rowan had driven away every protector, every companion, every person who'd tried to get close. Better to be alone than to hurt another innocent life. Better to be the rebellious, uncontrollable prince than to reveal the truth. His wolf was fundamentally broken, and he had no idea how to fix it. "We're running out of options," Aldrich said quietly. "The council is pressuring me to name another heir. They say a prince who can't control his wolf isn't fit to lead the pack." "Then let them have what they want." Rowan turned away, unable to bear the disappointment in his father's eyes. "Name my cousin Damien. He'd make a better alpha anyway." "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Rowan laughed bitterly. "I'm a liability, father, a danger to everyone around me. The pack would be safer with someone stable in line for the throne." Aldrich was silent for a long moment. Then, "There's one more option, one more person we could try." Rowan's shoulders tensed. "No, no more protectors. I won't—" "An Omega." That made Rowan turn around. "An Omega? You want to assign an Omega as my protector? Have you lost your mind? Not just any Omega, Lyra Ashwood. She's unique. Unique how? And since when do Omegas serve as protectors? They're not trained for combat. They don't have the strength. She's survived things that would break most warriors, and she has a gift for calming volatile wolves. The pack healers believe she might be able to help you find balance. Rowan stared at his father in disbelief. This was desperation, pure and simple. The mighty Alpha King reduced to assigning an Omega to protect his heir because no warrior would accept the position anymore. "This is humiliating," Rowan said flatly. "This is your last chance," Aldrich corrected. "If this doesn't work, the council will force my hand. They'll strip your title and name Damien as heir. So I suggest you give this Omega a fair opportunity to prove herself." He paused at the doorway. "She arrives tomorrow. Try not to break her in the first hour." The Alpha King left, and Rowan sank onto the only piece of furniture still intact, a window seat overlooking the packlands. Inside him, his wolf prowled restlessly, always searching for threats, always ready to attack, always impossible to silence. "An Omega," the beast seemed to sneer. "They send us an Omega when we need a warrior, when we need someone who can fight the darkness inside us." But beneath the derision, Rowan felt something else, something that might have been curiosity, or perhaps just the faint, desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. He crushed the hope quickly. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to trust, and trust led to people getting hurt. Better to stay alone in his gilded prison than to risk destroying another innocent life. Lyra Ashwood stood before the gates of Bloodmoon Keep, her small travel bag clutched in scarred hands, and wondered which particular sin in her past life had earned her this fate. Assignment to Prince Rowan's service was punishment, pure and simple. Everyone in the pack knew it. The prince was infamous for his temper, his instability, his tendency to send protectors running or limping away within days. And Lyra, scarred, broken Lyra with her dormant wolf and quiet ways, was being sent into that storm. "You sure about this?" The guard at the gate looked at her with something between pity and amusement. "Last girl who tried to serve the prince lasted 2 hours before she quit crying." "I'm sure," Lyra said softly. She didn't mention that she hadn't been given a choice. When you were an Omega with no family, no status, and a wolf that had never properly awakened, you took the assignments you were given and didn't complain. The guard shrugged and opened the gate. "Your funeral. The prince is in the East Wing. Try not to set him off. He's been worse than usual lately." Lyra walked through the magnificent halls of Bloodmoon Keep, barely noticing the opulence around her. She'd learned long ago not to be impressed by wealth or status. What mattered was survival, and right now, surviving meant somehow lasting longer in Prince Rowan's service than her predecessors. She found his chambers easily enough. They were the ones with 2 guards stationed outside, both looking tense and wary. "You the new Omega?" one asked. Lyra nodded. "Good luck," the other guard muttered. "He's in a mood. Broke 3 mirrors this morning." They opened the door, and Lyra stepped into what looked like the aftermath of a battle. Furniture was overturned, curtains shredded, and in the center of it all stood Prince Rowan. He was nothing like she'd expected. The rumors painted him as a monster, wild-eyed and savage, more beast than man. But the young man standing before her looked tired, exhausted actually. His dark hair was disheveled, his fine clothes rumpled, and his eyes, when they finally met hers, held not rage but a bone-deep weariness that Lyra recognized all too well. He looked like someone who'd been fighting for so long he'd forgotten what peace felt like. Just like her. "So, you're the Omega they've sent to babysit me," Rowan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let me guess, you drew the short straw, or did they threaten to exile you if you didn't take this assignment?" Lyra met his gaze calmly. "Does it matter?" That seemed to surprise him. He'd clearly been expecting fear or false bravado, not quiet acceptance. "I suppose it doesn't," he said after a moment. "You'll be gone by nightfall anyway. They always leave." "Then I'll try to break the record," Lyra replied, setting her bag down in a corner that wasn't covered in debris. Rowan watched her with narrowed eyes. "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" "Yes." The word came out harsh. "I'm dangerous, unstable. My wolf could attack at any moment, and you," he looked her up and down dismissively, "you are an Omega. You wouldn't stand a chance." Lyra had heard variations of this speech her entire life. "You're just an Omega, you're weak, fragile, useless without a strong wolf to protect you." She'd stopped letting it hurt years ago. "You're right," she said simply. "If you wanted to hurt me, I couldn't stop you. But I don't think you want to hurt me." "You don't know what I want." But there was something uncertain in Rowan's voice now, as if her calm was throwing him off balance. "You don't," Lyra agreed, "but I know what it's like to have something broken inside you that you can't fix, to feel like you're a danger to everyone around you, to push people away because you're terrified of what might happen if they get too close." Rowan's eyes flashed gold. "You know nothing about me." "I know the look of someone who's drowning," Lyra said quietly. "I see it in the mirror every day." For a moment, something passed between them, recognition perhaps, an understanding that two broken things had just found each other in the wreckage. Then Rowan's expression hardened. "I don't need your pity, Omega, and I don't need your psychoanalysis. What I need is to be left alone." "Too bad," Lyra said, beginning to pick up pieces of broken furniture. "I've been assigned as your protector, and I don't quit, so you're stuck with me, at least until your father says otherwise." "Protector?" Rowan scoffed. "You can barely protect yourself. Your wolf hasn't even—" He stopped, seeing the flicker of pain that crossed her face. Lyra's wolf was a sore subject. Most wolves awakened fully during puberty, but hers had stirred only briefly before falling silent again. The pack healers said it was trauma-related, that whatever had happened to her as a child had damaged the bond between human and wolf. She'd been labeled broken ever since. "You're right," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "My wolf is dormant, but that doesn't mean I can't serve you." "Serve me how?" Rowan challenged. "What exactly do they expect you to do? Hold my hand when the beast gets angry? Sing lullabies to calm the savage prince?" Lyra met his eyes. "If that's what you need, then yes." The sincerity in her voice seemed to disarm him completely. Rowan stared at her like a puzzle he couldn't solve, this quiet Omega who looked at him without fear or disgust, who spoke to him like he was a person rather than a problem to be managed. "You're insane," he said finally. "Probably, but I'm also very good at organizing rooms and keeping schedules, so while you figure out how to scare me away, I'll be putting your chambers back together." She turned her back on Rowan, a gesture of trust that no one had shown Rowan in years, and began sorting through the destruction methodically. Behind her, she could feel the prince's confused stare, could sense his wolf stirring with something that wasn't anger for once. Curiosity, maybe, or perhaps just surprise that someone had finally refused to be intimidated. Rowan watched the Omega work in silence, and for the first time in 4 years, the constant pressure inside his chest eased fractionally. The wolf that usually raged and demanded release was watching, waiting, almost calm. It made no sense. This slip of an Omega with her scarred hands and quiet voice should have triggered every protective and possessive instinct his broken wolf possessed, should have made the beast see her as prey or a threat or something to dominate. Instead, the wolf was almost peaceful. Impossible, Rowan thought, but he didn't order her to leave, didn't throw her out the way he had with all the others. He simply stood there, watching Lyra Ashwood piece together his shattered room, and wondered if perhaps his father had been right after all. Maybe this Omega was different. Maybe, just maybe, she was exactly what he needed. 3 days passed and Lyra remained. It was the longest any protector had lasted in months, and the pack was beginning to notice. Servants whispered in corners, council members exchanged meaningful glances, and Alpha King Aldrich watched his son with cautious hope. For Rowan, those 3 days were the most confusing of his life. Lyra didn't try to control him or change him. She simply existed in his space. She organized his chaos, brought him meals he actually ate, and maintained a calming presence that somehow kept his wolf from spiraling into rage. But more than that, she saw him. "You're getting tense," Lyra said on the afternoon of the 3rd day. They were in his study, Rowan attempting to focus on pack correspondence while his wolf prowled restlessly beneath his skin. Rowan looked up from the letter he'd been trying to read for the past 20 minutes. "What?" "Your shoulders," Lyra gestured without looking up from the book she was organizing. "They're up near your ears, and your breathing is getting shallow. That usually means the wolf is pushing for control." She was right. The beast inside him was indeed rising, triggered by a letter from the council questioning his fitness to rule. But how had she noticed when she wasn't even watching him? "How do you know that?" Rowan demanded. "I pay attention." Lyra finally looked at him, her brown eyes calm and knowing. "You have tells. When the wolf is calm, you're relaxed. When it's stirring, you get rigid. When it's close to breaking free, your eyes start to flicker gold, and you clench your left hand into a fist." Rowan glanced down and realized his left hand was indeed clenched so tight his knuckles were white. "You've been watching me," he said, unsure whether to be impressed or unnerved. "I'm your protector," Lyra replied simply. "It's my job to know when you need help before you know it yourself." "I don't need—" then stopped as the wolf surged violently, responding to his denial with a wave of rage so intense it stole his breath. He felt the shift beginning, bones starting to crack, fangs extending. The council's letter crumpled in his fist as he fought to maintain control, but it was slipping. Then Lyra was there, her hand on his arm. The touch was light, barely there, but the effect was instantaneous. The wolf's rage didn't disappear, but it muted, like someone had turned down the volume on a deafening sound. Rowan could still feel the beast's fury, but it was no longer overwhelming, no longer consuming. He could breathe. "That's it," Lyra said softly, her hand still resting on his forearm. "Just breathe. The wolf is angry, but you're in control. You decide when to shift, not the beast." "How are you doing this?" Rowan gasped, staring at the point where her skin met his. "How are you—" "I don't know," Lyra admitted, "but it's been happening since I arrived. When I'm close to you, your wolf calms. I can feel it." Rowan should have pulled away, should have been disturbed by this Omega's inexplicable effect on his wolf, but the relief flooding through him was too profound, too desperately needed. For the first time in years, he wasn't fighting alone. "Stay," he said before he could stop himself. "Just stay close, please." Lyra didn't question it, didn't make him explain. She simply moved her chair beside his and returned to her organizing, maintaining that light contact that kept his wolf from drowning him. And Rowan, reading the same council letter that had nearly triggered a transformation minutes before, found he could actually focus, could actually think beyond the constant battle for control. It was miraculous, impossible, and absolutely terrifying because it meant he was becoming dependent on this Omega in a way that went far beyond normal pack bonds. That evening, Lyra found herself summoned to the Alpha King's private study. Aldrich Bloodmoon was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver streaking his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He gestured for Lyra to sit, though he didn't use his alpha command to force compliance. A small courtesy, but one she appreciated. "You've lasted 3 days," Aldrich said without preamble. "That's longer than anyone expected, including me if I'm honest." "I'm as surprised as anyone, Alpha King," Lyra replied carefully. "Don't be modest. I've been receiving reports from the guards, the servants, even from Rowan himself, though he'd deny sending them." Aldrich's lips quirked slightly. "They all say the same thing. When you're present, my son is calmer, more focused. The episodes are less frequent." I'm not sure what to say to that, so she remained silent. "I need to understand why," Aldrich continued. "What are you doing differently than the warriors, the trained protectors, the pack healers we've tried?" "I'm not trying to control him," Lyra said after a moment. "Everyone else treats the prince like a problem to be solved or a beast to be tamed, but he's neither of those things. He's just struggling with something no one else understands." "And you understand it?" "No," Lyra admitted, "but I understand what it's like to be broken, to feel like there's something wrong with you that you can't fix no matter how hard you try, to have everyone look at you and see only the flaw, never the person beneath it." Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. "Your file says your wolf never fully awakened, that you were found as a child, traumatized, with no memory of your family or what happened to you." Lyra's hands clenched in her lap. Her past was not something she discussed, ever. "That information is correct, Alpha King," she said stiffly. "I'm not trying to cause you pain," Aldrich said, his voice gentling. "I'm trying to understand the connection between you and my son, because something is happening between you two, something beyond normal pack bonds." He was right, of course. Lyra had felt it from the moment she'd entered Rowan's chambers, a pull toward the prince that had nothing to do with duty and everything to do with something deeper, more primal. "I don't know what it is," Lyra said honestly, "but when I'm near him I can sense his wolf's distress, and somehow my presence helps calm it. I don't understand why." "The pack healers have a theory," Aldrich said. "They believe you might be Rowan's balance." "His what?" "Every powerful alpha has a balance, someone whose energy naturally stabilizes theirs. Usually it's their mate, but sometimes the bond forms before the mating ritual, appearing as an unexplainable connection." Aldrich studied her carefully. "An Omega stabilizing an alpha prince would be unprecedented, but not impossible." Lyra's heart was racing. Mate bond with Prince Rowan? The idea was absurd. She was nobody, a broken Omega with no family and a dormant wolf. The heir to the Bloodmoon pack could have any mate he wanted, any high-ranking she-wolf in the territories. "I think there's been a mistake," Lyra said. I can't be..." "Can't be what? Strong enough? Important enough?" Aldrich's expression softened. "Lyra, I don't care about rank or bloodlines. I care about my son, and if you're the one who can help him find peace, then as far as I'm concerned, you're exactly important enough." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the pack lands. "I'm going to be honest with you. The council is putting immense pressure on me to strip Rowan of his title. They say an unstable alpha is too dangerous to lead. If he can't learn to control his wolf, they'll force me to name Damien as heir." "Prince Rowan can control it," Lyra said firmly. "He needs you, I know. That's why I'm asking you to stay, not as a servant or a duty assignment, but as his protector in truth. Help him master the beast inside him. Help him become the alpha I know he can be." Lyra thought of Rowan, of the exhaustion in his eyes, the constant battle he fought, the loneliness that radiated from him like a tangible thing. Thought of how his wolf calmed at her touch, how he'd looked at her earlier with desperate hope when she'd helped him regain control. "I'll stay," she said quietly, "as long as he'll have me." "Thank you." Aldrich's relief was palpable. "Now, there's one more thing you should know. In 2 weeks, we're hosting the Council Summit. Leaders from every major pack will be here to assess Rowan's fitness to rule. If he can demonstrate control during that time," he trailed off meaningfully. "But if he can't, then they'll vote to remove him as heir, and there's nothing I'll be able to stop." Lyra left the Alpha King's study with her mind spinning. 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks to prove to the council that Prince Rowan was fit to lead. 2 weeks for an untrained Omega to somehow help an unstable prince master a wolf that had been out of control for years. It should have been impossible. It probably was impossible. But as Lyra made her way back to Rowan's chambers, she found him waiting for her at the door, his expression unsure and almost vulnerable. "Your father summoned you," Rowan said, not a question. "He wanted to discuss my assignment." "And? Are you leaving?" Something flickered in his eyes, fear quickly masked. "No, I'm staying, for as long as you need me." The relief that crossed Rowan's face was unmistakable. He stepped aside to let her in, and as she passed, their shoulders brushed. That brief contact sent warmth cascading through Lyra's chest, and she saw Rowan's eyes widen as if he felt it too. Whatever bond was forming between them, it was growing stronger by the day, and Lyra had no idea if that would save them or destroy them both. The next 7 days passed in a delicate dance of trust and terror. Rowan found himself becoming increasingly dependent on Lyra's presence. She attended his council meetings, her hand discreetly resting on his arm when his wolf stirred at perceived challenges. She joined him for his combat training, her proximity allowing him to focus on technique rather than fighting his beast. And every moment she was near, his wolf was manageable. Not gone, it would never be gone, but controlled in a way Rowan had never experienced. It should have made him grateful. Instead, it terrified him. "You're doing it again," Lyra said one afternoon. They were in the training yard, Rowan having just completed a successful sparring session without a single episode. "What?" Rowan asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Overthinking." Lyra handed him a water skin. "I can see it in your face. You're trying to figure out why this works, analyzing every angle, looking for the flaw." She wasn't wrong. Rowan had spent hours trying to understand the connection between them, trying to find a logical explanation for why this Omega's presence quieted his fractured wolf. "It's not natural," Rowan said. "This kind of effect, an Omega calming an Alpha this profoundly, it doesn't happen." "Maybe it does and we just don't know about it," Lyra suggested. "Or maybe we're something new, something unprecedented." "That's what worries me." Rowan set down the water skin, his expression troubled. "What happens when you leave, when this assignment ends and you're reassigned elsewhere? The wolf will return to how it was, and I'll be back where I started, or worse, dependent on something I can't have." Lyra was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you think this is? A temporary assignment? Isn't it?" Rowan looked at her directly. "You're an Omega, Lyra. Eventually, you'll want a mate, a family, a life beyond being a prince's emotional support. And when that happens—" "When that happens, we'll figure it out," Lyra interrupted. "But right now, I'm here, and you're improving. Can't that be enough?" It should have been enough, but Rowan could feel something deeper developing between them, something that went beyond protector and protected, beyond even the balance bond his father had mentioned. He was beginning to care for her, to anticipate her presence, to seek her out not just for the calm she brought, but for her. The way she smiled when she thought no one was looking, the quiet strength that let her face his wolf without flinching, the scars on her hands that she never explained, but that spoke of survival against odds that would have broken most people. She was remarkable, and he was falling for her in a way that could only end in disaster. "The council summit is in 1 week," Rowan said, changing the subject before he said something he couldn't take back. "Are you prepared?" "Am I prepared?" Lyra raised an eyebrow. "I'm not the one being evaluated." "No, but you'll be in the room. Every Alpha, Luna, and council member will be watching, judging, looking for any sign of weakness." Rowan's hands clenched. "If I lose control during the summit—" "You won't." Lyra's confidence was absolute. "You can't know that." "Yes, I can, because I'll be right beside you, and together we're stronger than your wolf's worst impulses." She stepped closer, looking up at him with those steady brown eyes. "Trust me, Rowan, just trust me." And despite every instinct warning him against reliance, against vulnerability, against hope, Rowan found that he did trust her, completely, utterly, which was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. That night, Lyra woke to the sound of distress. She was in her small antechamber, but even through the thick walls she could hear Rowan's harsh breathing, the muttered words of a nightmare. Without thinking, she rose and entered his bedroom. Moonlight streamed through the windows, illuminating Rowan thrashing in his bed, clearly trapped in some dark dream. His eyes flickered gold even while closed, and she could see the shift beginning, his wolf rising in response to whatever terror plagued his sleeping mind. "Rowan," Lyra called softly. No response. She moved closer. "Rowan, wake up!" His wolf surged, and suddenly Rowan was awake, but not awake, caught between sleep and consciousness, his instincts in full control. He lunged, moving with inhuman speed, and Lyra found herself pinned against the wall with claws at her throat. Rowan's eyes were fully gold now, the wolf in complete command, seeing only a threat to be eliminated. Lyra should have been terrified, should have screamed for the guards, but she looked into those golden eyes and saw not a monster, saw Rowan, trapped and frightened and fighting to regain control. "It's me," she said calmly, not struggling against the hold. "It's Lyra. You're safe. You're in your room. This is a nightmare, not real." The wolf snarled, claws pressing dangerously against her skin. "I know you're scared," Lyra continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I know the dreams are bad, but I'm not a threat. You know me. You trust me." Something flickered in those golden eyes, recognition beginning to surface. "That's it," Lyra encouraged. "Come back, Rowan. Come back to me." Slowly, painfully, the gold began to recede, the claws withdrew, and then Rowan was fully present, staring at her with horror as he realized what he'd done. "I almost," his voice broke. "Lyra, I could have killed you." "But you didn't." She reached up, ignoring his flinch, and cupped his face in her scarred hands. "Your wolf recognized me, even in the nightmare. You pulled back." "This time," Rowan said hoarsely. "But what about next time? What if the wolf doesn't stop? What if I—" "You won't." Lyra's certainty was unshakable, "because you're stronger than you think, and because I'm not afraid of you." "You should be," Rowan whispered, but he didn't pull away from her touch. They stood like that for a long moment, inches apart, something electric and undeniable crackling in the air between them. Rowan's gaze dropped to Lyra's lips, and she felt her breath catch. This was dangerous. This was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. She was his protector, his balance, nothing more. Getting emotionally involved would only complicate everything. But when Rowan leaned forward slightly, giving her every chance to pull away, Lyra found she didn't want to. Found that the pull between them was too strong to resist anymore. Their lips met softly, tentatively, and the world seemed to catch fire. The kiss was gentle but earth-shattering, sending waves of warmth through Lyra's entire body, and somewhere deep inside her, in the place where her wolf had been dormant for years, she felt something stir, not fully awakening, but responding, reaching toward Rowan's wolf in a way it had never reached for anything before. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Rowan's eyes were wide with wonder. "Your wolf," he breathed. "I felt it. For just a moment, I felt it connect with mine." Lyra's hand went to her chest, feeling the echo of that connection. "I felt it too. Lyra, what's happening to us?" She didn't have an answer, didn't understand how a broken Omega and an unstable prince could form a bond this powerful, this unprecedented. But standing there in the moonlight, still close enough to feel his warmth, Lyra knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever they were becoming to each other, there was no going back now. The bond between them was real, growing stronger by the day, and no amount of logic or fear was going to break it. The only question was whether it would save them or doom them both. The council summit arrived like an approaching storm, inevitable and potentially devastating. Bloodmoon Keep filled with Alpha and Luna wolves from every major pack in the territories. Council members took up residence in the guest wings, and everywhere Rowan turned, he felt eyes judging him, assessing him, waiting for him to fail. "Remember," Lyra said quietly as they prepared for the opening ceremony, "they're not here to see you fail. They're here to evaluate the future of the Bloodmoon pack. Show them the Rowan I've seen these past 2 weeks, strong, controlled, capable of leading." Rowan adjusted his formal attire, trying to ignore the way his wolf paced nervously beneath his skin. The beast didn't like being surrounded by so many powerful wolves, didn't like the challenge implicit in their presence. But with Lyra standing beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, he could manage the instincts, could keep the wolf from rising in response to perceived threats. "What if it's not enough?" Rowan asked. "What if they still vote to remove me?" "Then we'll face that when it happens," Lyra said firmly, "but I don't think it will come to that. You're ready for this, Rowan." He wanted to believe her, wanted to have even a fraction of her faith in him, but self-doubt was a habit formed over years, and it didn't disappear in 2 weeks. The opening ceremony was held in the Great Hall, a massive space designed to accommodate hundreds of pack members. As Rowan entered with his father, with Lyra walking 2 steps behind as protocol demanded, he felt the weight of every gaze. Alpha King Aldrich took his place on the elevated platform, and Rowan stood at his right hand, the position of heir. To his left stood Damien, Rowan's cousin and the alternative heir should Rowan be deemed unfit. Damien was everything Rowan wasn't: stable, charismatic, politically savvy. He caught Rowan's eye and smiled, but there was something cold in the expression, something that made Rowan's wolf bristle with warning. "Not a friend," the beast rumbled. "Rival, threat." Lyra's hand brushed against Rowan's back, a subtle touch, hidden by their positioning. The wolf's suspicion didn't disappear, but it calmed to a manageable level. Aldrich began his address, welcoming the assembled packs and outlining the summit's purpose, but Rowan barely heard it, too focused on maintaining his control, on projecting the image of a stable heir worthy of leading the Bloodmoon pack. Then Aldrich said the words Rowan had been dreading. "As part of this summit, my son Rowan will undergo a formal evaluation. The council will assess his fitness to lead, his control over his wolf, and his capability to unite our pack." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rowan felt his pulse quicken, felt the wolf surge in response to his anxiety. "Calm," Lyra's voice whispered in his mind. Not real words, but the sensation of her presence, her steadying influence. "You can do this." Rowan took a deep breath and stepped forward when his father gestured. Every eye in the hall focused on him, and the pressure was immense. I know there have been concerns about my stability, about my ability to control my wolf and lead this pack. Those concerns are valid. I have struggled with control. I have driven away protectors and isolated myself out of fear of hurting those around me. More murmurs, but Rowan pushed on. However, I have learned that true strength isn't about fighting battles alone. It's about accepting help when you need it, about surrounding yourself with those who make you better rather than weaker. He glanced back at Lyra, who stood among the other attendants, but was watching him with such faith it nearly undid him. I am not the same wolf I was 3 months ago, and I'm prepared to prove that to this council. The applause that followed was polite but uncertain. No one knew what to make of a prince who admitted weakness so openly. Except Lyra, whose smile told him he'd said exactly the right thing. The formal evaluation began the next day. Council members put Rowan through a series of tests designed to trigger his wolf's aggression, combat trials, territorial challenges, situations meant to provoke an unstable response. And through it all, Lyra was there, standing at the edge of the training ring where the council allowed her as his designated protector. Her presence was enough to keep his wolf from spiraling, to let him face each challenge with focus rather than fear. By the 3rd day, even the most skeptical council members were beginning to look impressed. "He's like a different wolf," Lyra heard one elder say to another. "Controlled, focused, nothing like the reports suggested." But not everyone was pleased with Rowan's success. On the 4th night, Lyra awoke to find Damien in her antechamber, his expression cold. "You've been impressive," Rowan's cousin said without preamble, managing to stabilize the unstable prince. "But we both know it's temporary, don't we?" Lyra sat up warily. "What do you want, Prince Damien?" "I want you to understand reality." Damien moved closer, his alpha energy pressing against her in a way meant to intimidate. "You're an Omega, a broken one at that. The council might be impressed with Rowan's performance now, but do you truly believe they'll accept an heir who requires an Omega's constant presence to function? Rowan doesn't require, doesn't he?" Damien smiled coldly. "Everyone's seen how he is with you versus without you. The moment you leave the room, his control begins to slip. What happens when he has to lead without you, when you're not available to hold his hand through every challenge?" Lyra didn't answer because Damien was voicing the same fears she'd had herself. "You're setting him up for failure," Damien continued. "The kinder thing would be to step away now. Let him learn to manage on his own, or let the council name me heir. Either way, Bloodmoon Pack gets a stable leader." "You don't care about the pack," Lyra said, suddenly understanding. "You care about power." Damien's smile didn't waver. "I care about both, and I'm prepared to do what's necessary to ensure Bloodmoon's future. Are you?" He left before Lyra could respond, but his words lingered like poison. Was she helping Rowan or making him dependent? Was their bond strengthening him or creating a weakness that would be exploited? The next morning, Lyra found Rowan in the training yard working through combat forms with an intensity that suggested he was trying to exhaust himself into peace. "You're up early," she said, approaching carefully. Rowan completed his current form before acknowledging her. "Couldn't sleep. The summit evaluation concludes today. The council votes tomorrow." "I know. Damien visited you last night." It wasn't a question. Rowan probably sensed his cousin's presence even from his chambers. "What did he say?" Lyra debated lying, but decided Rowan deserved the truth. "He said, I'm making you dependent, that the council won't accept an heir who needs an Omega to function." Rowan's hands clenched on his practice sword. "He's not wrong." "Rowan!" "No, Lyra, look at us." Rowan turned to face her, his expression tormented. "I can barely make it through an hour without you nearby. My wolf spirals the moment you're out of sight. That's not strength, that's a liability. Damien's right, the council will see it, if they haven't already." "So what are you saying?" Lyra's heart was pounding. "That we should break the bond? That I should leave?" "I'm saying maybe Damien should be heir," Rowan said, and the words seemed to physically pain him. "He's stable, capable, everything an alpha should be. The pack would be better off." "Stop!" Lyra moved closer, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You're letting fear make your decisions. Yes, our bond is strong. Yes, you're calmer when I'm near, but that doesn't make you weak, it makes you balanced. Even the strongest alphas have mates who ground them, who help them access their full strength." "You're not my mate," Rowan said, but there was no conviction in it. "Aren't I?" Lyra challenged. "What do you think this bond is, Rowan? What do you think happens when my dormant wolf stirs only around you, when your fractured wolf finds peace only with me? That's not a protector bond, that's something deeper, something permanent." Rowan stared at her, and she saw the war raging inside him, hope battling against fear, desire warring with duty. "Even if that's true," he said finally, "the Council will never accept an Omega as the future Luna of Bloodmoon Pack. They expect you to be strong enough to choose your own mate, to stand by your choices regardless of opposition. Isn't that what an alpha does?" Before Rowan could respond, a warning howl split the air. Something was wrong. They ran toward the source of the sound and arrived at the guest wing to find chaos. Guards rushed past, servants were evacuating, and Alpha Aldrich stood in the hallway outside one of the council members' rooms, his face grim. "What happened?" Rowan demanded. "Council member Theron has been attacked, clawed like an animal got to him. He's alive, but barely." Rowan felt his blood run cold. "When?" "Sometime in the night. The healers say it was a wolf attack. Someone shifted and went after him deliberately." The implications were immediate and devastating. A wolf attack during the council summit, with tensions already high over Rowan's evaluation. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. "They'll blame me," Rowan said, his wolf rising in panic. "They'll say my unstable wolf did this, and they'll—" "Breathe," Lyra said firmly, taking his hand. "Don't spiral. We don't know what happened yet." But as guards began to gather, as whispers spread through the assembled packs, Rowan saw Damien watching from across the corridor, and his cousin was smiling. The council convened an emergency session within hours. Rowan stood before them, facing accusations from every direction. Councilmember Theron, bandaged and weak, pointed a shaking finger at the prince. "It was him," Theron rasped. "I saw the wolf, black as midnight, massive, the same description everyone gives of Prince Rowan's wolf form." "I didn't attack you," Rowan said, fighting to keep his voice steady. His wolf was in full panic mode, thrashing against his control, making his eyes flicker gold. "I was in my chambers all night. My guards can confirm." "Your guards were outside," another council member interrupted. "They can't confirm what you did inside those chambers, and we all know you have a history of violent episodes." "That was years ago." Rowan's control was slipping, his desperation feeding the wolf's frenzy. "I haven't had an incident since Lyra became my protector." "Ah, yes, the Omega," Councilwoman Marin said coldly. "How convenient that the moment you gain an Omega balance, you suddenly appear stable. What happens when she's not around, Prince Rowan? Do you revert to the beast we've all heard about?" Lyra stood among the observers, forbidden from speaking, but watching the proceedings with growing fury. They were setting Rowan up, boxing him in with questions designed to make him look guilty regardless of his answers. And Rowan was spiraling. She could see it, the way his hands shook, the way his breathing accelerated, the way his wolf was seconds from bursting free in a room full of witnesses who would use it as proof of his guilt. She couldn't let that happen. Breaking protocol, Lyra stepped forward. Prince Rowan didn't attack Councilmember Theron. Every head turned to her. Alpha Aldrich looked alarmed. The council members looked outraged. Omega, you have no voice in these proceedings, Councilwoman Marin snapped. Return to your place immediately. Not until you hear the truth, Lyra said, moving to stand beside Rowan. Her hand found his, and she felt him grip it desperately, using her presence to claw back control of his wolf. And what truth would that be? Marin's voice dripped with condescension. That someone is framing Rowan to ensure he's removed as heir. Lyra met the council's eyes steadily. The attack happened the night before the final evaluation vote. The description of the wolf matches Rowan perfectly. The timing is too convenient. Someone wants you to believe the prince is unstable and dangerous. Baseless accusations, Theron started. Are they? Lyra turned to the injured council member. You said you saw a massive black wolf, but the royal healers confirmed your wounds were inflicted while you were sleeping. How did you see your attacker when you were unconscious when they struck? Theron paled. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Furthermore, Lyra continued, her confidence growing, Prince Rowan's wolf is unique. It has a distinctive scent signature that the pack trackers have documented extensively over the years. I propose we have the trackers examine Councilmember Theron's wounds. If the scent matches Rowan's wolf, then I'll accept his guilt. But if it doesn't, she let the implication hang in the air. Alpha Aldrich, catching on, nodded sharply. Bring the head tracker. Now. The waiting was agony. Rowan stood rigid beside Lyra, his wolf still thrashing, but contained by her proximity. She could feel his fear, his gratitude, his desperate hope that her gambit would pay off. The head tracker arrived, an elderly wolf named Soren, known for his impeccable nose and absolute honesty. He examined Theron's wounds carefully, scenting the dried blood and torn flesh. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. This wasn't Prince Rowan's wolf. The hall erupted into chaos. Theron looked panicked. The council members began shouting questions. Are you certain? Aldrich demanded over the noise. Absolutely, Alpha King, said Soren. Prince Rowan's wolf has a very distinctive scent, ancient power mixed with instability, like lightning before a storm. The wolf that attacked Councilmember Theron was different, controlled, calculated, and, he paused, scenting the wounds again, familiar. I know this scent, but I can't quite place. It's mine, a voice said from the back of the hall. Everyone turned to see Damien stepping forward, his expression unreadable. What? Aldrich's voice was dangerous. The wolf that attacked Theron bears my scent signature, Damien said calmly, because I'm the one who did it. The hall fell into stunned silence. Rowan's hand tightened on Lyra's, shock and betrayal radiating from him in waves. You're confessing? Councilwoman Marin asked incredulously. I'm clarifying, Damien corrected. I attacked Theron because he was planning to vote against Rowan regardless of his performance. I heard him talking with other council members, scheming to remove my cousin from the line of succession based on prejudice rather than merit. So you attacked him? Aldrich's voice was rising, his alpha power filling the room. I defended my family's honor, Damien said, his own alpha presence rising to meet his uncle's. Rowan has worked harder than anyone to prove himself worthy of the heir position. These council members were going to ignore all evidence of his growth because they'd already decided he was unfit to be heir. I won't apologize for protecting my cousin's rightful place. It was a masterful manipulation, confessing to the attack while framing it as loyalty rather than ambition. The council couldn't quite condemn him for defending Rowan, but they couldn't ignore the violence either. Lyra, however, wasn't buying it. She'd seen Damien's true colors the night before, had heard the coldness in his voice when he'd suggested she was making Rowan weak. This wasn't about protecting Rowan. It was about something else entirely. You're lying, Lyra said quietly. Every eye turned to her. Damien's expression remained pleasant, but something cold flickered in his gaze. "Excuse me, Omega?" "You're lying," Lyra repeated louder this time. "You're lying because you didn't attack Theron to protect Rowan. You attacked him to frame Rowan. You expected everyone to assume Rowan lost control and attacked a council member. You wanted him removed as heir so you could take his place." "That's a serious accusation," Damien said, still calm. "Do you have any proof?" Lyra didn't, but she knew she was right, knew it with the same instinct that had drawn her to Rowan from the beginning. Then Rowan spoke, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. "Show them your wolf." Damien's pleasant expression faltered. "What?"
"Show them your wolf form," Rowan repeated. "If you truly attacked Theron, the council should see the wolf that committed the violence. Unless—" his eyes narrowed. "Unless you can't. Unless you used magic to mimic my wolf's appearance, knowing that I'd be blamed." It was a shot in the dark, but Lyra saw it land. Damien's composure cracked just slightly, a flicker of panic crossing his features before he could mask it. "Dark magic to alter wolf form is forbidden," Councilwoman Marin said slowly. "If you've done this, Prince Damien—" "I haven't done anything," Damien said quickly, too quickly. "I shifted and attacked Theron, that's all." "Then prove it," Aldrich commanded. "Shift. Let us see your wolf." For a long moment, Damien didn't move. Then his lips curved into a cold smile. "Very well," he said, "but when I do, when you see that I'm telling the truth about protecting my cousin, I want something in return." "You're in no position to make demands," Aldrich growled. "Aren't I?" Damien's eyes glinted with something dark. "I saved Rowan's reputation. The least he can do is share his secret." "What secret?" Rowan asked, though Lyra could feel his dread. "The secret of how a broken Omega can calm an unstable alpha wolf," Damien said, his gaze shifting to Lyra. "Because I've been doing research, cousin, and I've discovered something very interesting about our little Omega friend." Lyra's blood ran cold. Whatever Damien had discovered, whatever secret he was about to reveal, she knew it would change everything. "Lyra Ashwood," Damien said, addressing the assembled council with theatrical precision, "was found as a child, traumatized and alone, with no memory of her family or pack. The healers determined her wolf was dormant, locked away by whatever trauma she'd endured. For years, she's been considered broken, useless. But that's not quite true, is it?" Lyra's felt Rowan's questioning gaze on her, but she couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the betrayal in his eyes when he learned what she'd been hiding. "What are you talking about?" Aldrich demanded. "Our Omega friend here isn't just any Omega. She's a null wolf, an extremely rare type whose dormant state isn't due to trauma, but to their unique nature. Null wolves absorb and neutralize the chaotic energy of other wolves, particularly unstable or damaged ones. They're essentially emotional sponges designed by nature to balance out wolves who would otherwise be too dangerous to exist in packs." The council members leaned forward with interest. Rowan's hand went slack in Lyra's grip. "That's why she can calm you, cousin," Damien said, looking at Rowan. "It's not because of some profound connection or fated mate bond. It's because her wolf is literally absorbing your instability, filtering it, neutralizing it. She's a tool, a very useful one, admittedly, but a tool nonetheless." "That's not—" Lyra started, but her voice faltered, because it was true, or at least partially true. She'd discovered the truth about her nature 2 years ago when a traveling healer had identified her as a null wolf. The healer had explained that null wolves were born to serve unstable wolves, to help them find balance. It was their purpose, their function, their curse. "You knew," Rowan said quietly, and the hurt in his voice cut deeper than any blade. "You knew what you were doing to me, and you didn't tell me?" I didn't know if it was true, Lyra said desperately. The healer's theory was just that, a theory. And when I met you, when the bond formed, it felt like more than just my wolf absorbing your instability. It felt real. We felt real. Real? Rowan's laugh was bitter. How could any of this be real when you've been using me as some kind of test subject for your abilities? That's not what happened. Lyra's own wolf was stirring now, responding to her distress in a way it never had before. Yes, I'm a null wolf. Yes, my wolf absorbs chaotic energy. But what we have, what we've built, that's not just function. That's connection. That's enough. Aldrich's command cut through their argument. He looked at Damien. How do you know this information? I did research, Damien said smoothly. When I noticed how effectively this Omega was managing my cousin's wolf, I became curious. I consulted with experts, studied ancient texts. Null wolves are rare, but they're documented throughout pack history. Usually, they're identified young and assigned to unstable wolves who need balancing. And you chose to not share this information until now because... Councilwoman Marin's tone was suspicious. Because I wanted proof, Damien said. I needed to be certain before I made accusations. But now that we're all here, now that the council is evaluating Rowan's fitness to lead, you deserve to know the truth. My cousin's apparent stability is artificial. It's dependent on constant proximity to a null wolf. Remove her, and he'll revert to the unstable prince we've all feared. The council members began murmuring among themselves. I could see the calculation in their eyes, weighing Rowan's value as heir against the inconvenience of requiring a null wolf's constant presence. Is this true? Aldrich asked Rowan. Are you dependent on Lyra's presence to maintain control? Rowan's jaw worked. He could feel the war raging inside him, pride against honesty, fear against duty. Yes, he said finally. When Lyra is near, my wolf is calm, manageable. When she's not, he swallowed hard. The instability returns. Maybe not as severe as before, but it's there. Then how can you possibly lead this pack? Councilwoman Marin demanded. What happens during battle when your Omega protector can't be by your side? What happens if she's injured, killed, assigned somewhere else? Do we risk our pack's future on a bond that could be broken at any moment? The bond can't be broken, Lyra said, her voice stronger now. That's what makes null wolves different from ordinary protectors. Once we bond with an unstable wolf, that connection is permanent. Distance might weaken it, but it never fully severs. I'll always be able to sense Rowan, always be able to help stabilize him. Always? Damien's smile was cruel. What about when you take a mate, Lyra, or when you decide you want a different life? Null wolves aren't meant to have their own futures. They're meant to serve. Are you truly prepared to sacrifice everything for my cousin? It was the same question that had haunted Lyra since she discovered her nature. Null wolves in the old stories rarely had happy endings. They were tools, used and discarded once their unstable wolves either found true balance or died. But looking at Rowan now, at the pain and confusion and desperate hope in his eyes, Lyra knew her answer.
Yes, she said simply. I'm prepared to sacrifice everything. Because Rowan isn't just my assignment or my purpose. He's... She took a shaking breath. He's my mate, in every way that matters. Impossible, Councilwoman Marin scoffed. Null wolves don't form mate bonds. They form service bonds. Maybe that used to be true, Lyra said, but my wolf is stirring in ways the texts never describe. It's not just absorbing Rowan's chaos, it's connecting with his wolf, communicating with it, healing it. That's not a tool serving its function, that's a mate bond forming. She turned to Rowan, ignoring the council, ignoring Damien, ignoring everyone but the prince who'd come to mean everything to her. I should have told you the truth about what I am, Lyra said. I was afraid you'd see me as just another protector using you, afraid the connection we'd built was all in my head. But Rowan, I swear to you, what I feel for you is real. What we have is real. Null wolf or not, broken or not, I choose you. I will always choose you. Rowan stared at her, emotions warring across his face. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand again. You're not broken, he said quietly. You were never broken. You're exactly what I needed when I needed it most. And if being a null wolf means you're stuck with me, a small smile tugged at his lips, then I'm the luckiest unstable wolf alive. How touching, Damien interrupted. But it doesn't change the facts. Rowan is dependent on an Omega to function. That's not the kind of strength Bloodmoon Pack needs in its alpha. Then what do you suggest? Aldrich asked, his tone dangerous. I suggest we put it to the test, Damien said. Let Rowan face a challenge without his Omega balance. If he can maintain control, prove his wolf is truly improving and not just being artificially suppressed, then I'll support his claim as heir. But if he can't, Damien's eyes glinted, then perhaps it's time to consider alternative succession plans. It was a trap, obviously. Damien was betting that without Lyra's presence, Rowan would lose control spectacularly, proving to the council that he was unfit to lead. But Rowan, to Lyra's surprise, nodded. I accept. Lyra, no, Lyra started. I have to, Rowan said, squeezing her hand. If I'm going to be alpha, I need to prove I can function without you constantly at my side. Not because our bond isn't real, but because you're right. A true alpha makes his own choices and stands by them. He turned to the council. Set your challenge. I'll face it without Lyra's direct assistance, and when I succeed, I want the council's vote in favor of my position as heir. And if you fail, Councilwoman Marin asked, then I'll step aside and support Damien as heir, Rowan said, though the words clearly pained him. The council conferred briefly, then Marin spoke. Very well. Tomorrow at dawn, you'll face the Gauntlet, a combat trial against 3 of our finest warriors. You must defeat all 3 without shifting into a rage state. If you can demonstrate control under that pressure without your Omega's interference, we'll vote in your favor. Agreed, Rowan said. As the council dismissed, Lyra pulled Rowan aside, her heart racing with fear. You can't do this, not yet. We need more time to strengthen your control. We don't have more time, Rowan said gently. And Lyra, I need to prove this, not just to the council, but to myself. I need to know I'm more than just a prince kept stable by his Omega gifts. You are more, Lyra insisted. You're strong and brave and... I'm terrified, Rowan admitted, but I have to try. For us, for our future. He cupped her face in his hands. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that you saved me, the real me, not just the stable version. You saw me when I was at my worst and you didn't run. That's worth more than any council vote. Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to find some way to protect him from this impossible challenge, but she could see the determination in his eyes, the need to prove himself. So instead, she kissed him, poured everything she felt, love, fear, hope, desperation, into that kiss. I believe in you, she whispered against his lips. I've always believed in you. Then that will have to be enough, Rowan said. But as they parted, as Rowan prepared for the trial that could end his claim to the throne, Lyra made a decision of her own. If Rowan was going to fight for their future, then so was she. And if Damien thought he'd won by exposing her nature, he was about to learn that a null wolf protecting her mate was the most dangerous force in any pack. Dawn arrived too quickly. Rowan stood in the center of the training arena, watching as 3 massive warriors took their positions. These weren't ordinary pack members. They were champion fighters from other territories, brought in specifically to test him to his absolute limits. The council observed from elevated seating, Damien among them wearing an expression of false concern that made Rowan's wolf snarl. Lyra was confined to the far side of the arena, close enough that Rowan could sense her presence, but too far for her calming effect to reach him fully. He was on his own. "The rules are simple," Councilwoman Marin announced. Prince Rowan must defeat all 3 opponents using only his human form combat skills. Any sign of losing control, eyes flashing gold, partial shift, rage state will result in immediate failure. Begin. The first warrior attacked before Rowan could fully brace himself. The man was fast, experienced, and fought with confidence of someone who knew his opponent's weakness. Rowan dodged, blocked, countered, falling back on years of training that had been interrupted by countless episodes. His wolf stirred, agitated by the violence, by the challenge to Rowan's dominance. "Calm," Rowan told himself. "Stay in control. You can do this." He landed a solid hit, following it with a combination that forced the warrior back. For a moment, Rowan felt hope rising. He could win this. He could prove. The second warrior joined the fight, attacking from behind while Rowan was focused on the first. Pain exploded across Rowan's back as claws raked his skin. The warrior had shifted his hands only, a technique that skirted the rules. Rowan's wolf surged, responding to the pain and betrayal with murderous intent. "No," Rowan gasped, fighting to contain the beast. "Not now, not like this." But his eyes were already flickering gold. His control was slipping. The warriors pressed their advantage, sensing his distraction, landing blows that would have dropped a lesser wolf. In the stands, Damien smiled. And across the arena, Lyra felt Rowan's control fracturing through their bond, felt his wolf clawing toward the surface, driven by pain and desperation and the certainty of failure. She couldn't intervene directly, that would disqualify Rowan immediately, but there had to be something she could do, some way to help him without breaking the rules. Then she remembered what Damien had said about null wolves. They absorbed chaotic energy, neutralized instability. What if she could do that from a distance? Lyra had never tried it before, had always relied on touch, on proximity to channel her gift. But the bond with Rowan had grown so strong over the past weeks, had deepened with every shared moment and whispered confidence. Maybe it was strong enough to bridge the physical gap between them. Closing her eyes, Lyra reached for that bond, felt for the thread of connection that linked her wolf to Rowan's, that made her constantly aware of his emotional state. "I'm here," she thought, pushing the message along that thread. "You're not alone. Let me help." She felt Rowan's surprise, felt the moment he recognized her presence in his mind, and then she felt something else, his wolf's chaotic energy, the rage and fear and desperation that threatened to consume him. Lyra began to pull that chaos into herself, absorbing it the way her null wolf nature was designed to do. But this time she didn't just neutralize it, she transformed it, sending back calmness and strength and absolute faith in Rowan's ability to win. In the arena, Rowan felt the change. His wolf was still there, still powerful, but the uncontrollable rage had faded. In its place was clarity, focus, the ability to think and fight without being overwhelmed by instinct. He caught the second warrior's next attack, used the man's momentum against him, and sent him crashing into the first warrior. Before they could recover, Rowan moved with precision born of years of training, finally unhindered by his wolf's interference. 3 minutes later, both warriors were on the ground, defeated but unharmed. The third warrior, the largest and most skilled, entered the ring with a grim smile. "Impressive, but I'm not going easy on you, Prince." "I wouldn't want you to," Rowan said, and this time there was confidence in his voice. The fight that followed was brutal and beautiful. Rowan moved like water, flowing around attacks, finding openings, demonstrating the combat skill that had always been present but had been buried beneath his wolf's instability. And through it all, Lyra maintained that distant connection, absorbing the spikes of anger and fear, sending back the calm and focus Rowan needed to fight at his full potential. When the third warrior finally yielded, the arena erupted in applause. Even the council members looked impressed, all except Damien, whose expression had gone cold and calculating. Councilwoman Marin stood. "Prince Rowan has demonstrated exceptional control and combat prowess. The council will now vote on his fitness to serve as heir." The vote was swift and nearly unanimous. Only 2 council members voted against Rowan, and notably, Damien abstained rather than supporting his cousin as he'd promised. "The motion passes," Marin announced. "Prince Rowan Bloodmoon is confirmed as heir to the Bloodmoon pack, with all rights and responsibilities that position entails." Alpha Aldrich stood, pride shining in his eyes as he embraced his son. Well done. But Rowan barely heard the congratulations. He was looking across the arena at Lyra, who had collapsed against the wall, pale and shaking from the effort of maintaining their connection from such a distance. He ran to her, gathering her into his arms as she trembled. "What did you do?" he whispered. "Helped," Lyra managed, "without breaking the rules. Your wolf is so strong, Rowan, the chaos it generates. I've never absorbed that much at once." "You could have hurt yourself," Rowan said, torn between gratitude and anger. "Null wolves aren't supposed to absorb from a distance. You could have—" "Could have what? Let you fail?" Lyra smiled weakly. "We're mates, Rowan. Your victories are mine. Your battles are mine. That's how this works." Rowan held her tighter, feeling something shift inside him. His wolf, which should have been agitated after the fight, was instead peaceful, content, as if it had finally found what it had been searching for all along. Not dominance, not control. Home. "I love you," Rowan said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "I love you too," Lyra interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "Since the first moment you looked at me and saw a person instead of just an Omega. Since you trusted me when you had every reason not to. Since—" Their kiss was interrupted by slow, mocking applause. Damien stood a few feet away, his expression twisted with barely concealed rage. How touching, the unstable prince and his Omega handler professing their love. But you do realize this doesn't change anything, don't you? "The council has voted," Rowan said, standing but keeping Lyra close. "I'm heir. You've lost, Damien." "Lost?" Damien laughed. "Oh, cousin, this was never about the council vote. That was just a distraction." Warning bells rang in Rowan's mind. "What did you do?" "I cursed you," Damien said simply. "Dark magic, applied carefully over years. Every time you lost control, every time you hurt someone, every time you pushed away another protector, that was my influence, slowly poisoning your wolf from within." "That's impossible," Lyra breathed. "Curses don't work on wolves. Our healing factor—" "Rejects physical curses, yes," Damien agreed, "but psychological ones, those can take root if applied carefully enough, and I've been very, very careful." He pulled something from his pocket, a small talisman marked with symbols that made Rowan's wolf recoil in recognition. "This is the anchor. As long as I hold it, as long as the curse remains active, your wolf will never be truly stable. You'll always be one bad day away from losing control. Always be dependent on your little Omega to function." "Why?" Rowan demanded, his wolf rising not with rage, but with hurt. "We're family. I never did anything to you." "You were born,"
Damien said coldly. Born as the Alpha's son, given everything I had to fight for. You think I wanted to be the backup heir, the one only considered when the real prince failed? I've spent my entire life in your shadow, so I made sure that shadow grew long enough to consume you. He crushed the talisman in his fist, and Rowan felt the curse activate with renewed force. His wolf exploded inside him, all the chaos Lyra had carefully absorbed rushing back amplified. His vision went gold, his bones began to crack. No! Lyra threw herself between Rowan and Damien, her own wolf surging to life for the first time in her memory. And what emerged was nothing like anyone expected. Lyra's wolf was pure white, a color so rare it was almost mythical, and it radiated a power that made even the strongest wolves in the arena take a step back, because null wolves, when they finally awakened fully, didn't just absorb chaos, they transformed it into something new. Lyra's wolf reached for Rowan's, not to suppress or control, but to heal. She dove into the curse that Damien had woven through Rowan's wolf over years, and she began systematically unraveling it, taking the poison that had fractured Rowan's beast and pulling it out by the roots. It should have been impossible. Curses that deep, that old, couldn't be removed without killing the host. But Lyra wasn't trying to remove it. She was absorbing it, taking every bit of dark magic into herself, neutralizing it through her null wolf nature, and giving Rowan back the wolf he was always meant to have. Rowan felt the change instantly. The constant pressure in his mind eased, the rage that had been his companion for years faded, and in its place was clarity, power, control. His wolf was still there, still strong and fierce, but it was his now, truly his, no longer twisted by curse or chaos. When Lyra collapsed, her white wolf form flickering back to human, Rowan caught her, her body overwhelmed by absorbing years of curse in minutes, but she was alive, and she was smiling. "The curse," the councilwoman Marin said, rounding on Damien. "You admit to cursing the heir to Bloodmoon Pack?" Damien's confidence faltered. He had expected Rowan to lose control, expected the curse to win. He hadn't counted on a null wolf powerful enough to break what he'd built. It was for the good of the pack. Rowan was always unstable. You cursed my son." Alpha Aldrich's voice was deadly quiet. "Used dark magic forbidden by every pack law. Sabotaged the heir for your own ambition." His alpha power flooded the arena, forcing every wolf present to their knees, everyone except Rowan, who stood holding Lyra, his own power rising to match his father's. Because Rowan's wolf, free from its curse, was revealing its true nature, and that nature was stronger than anyone had imagined, strong enough to stand against an alpha's command, strong enough to protect his unconscious mate even while facing his father's wrath. Aldrich saw it and smiled grimly. "There's the alpha I always knew you could be." He turned to the council. "Damien Bloodmoon is hereby stripped of his rank and exiled from Bloodmoon territory for use of dark magic against a pack heir. Does anyone object?" No one did. Even Damien's supporters remained silent, unwilling to defend the indefensible. As guards moved to take Damien away, Rowan's cousin looked at him with pure hatred. "You think you've won, but you're still just a prince who needs an Omega to function." "No," Rowan interrupted. "I'm an Alpha who chose an Omega as his mate. There's a difference." And carrying Lyra in his arms, ignoring the stunned council and celebrating pack, Rowan walked out of the arena. Behind him, whispers had already begun to spread about the unstable prince who had been cursed all along, about the Omega whose wolf awakened to save him, about a bond that had broken every rule and emerged stronger for it. But Rowan didn't care about any of that. All he cared about was the woman in his arms, who had sacrificed everything to heal him. His mate, his balance, his salvation, his Lyra.
3 months later, the pack gathered for a ceremony that would be talked about for generations. The mating ceremony between Prince Rowan Bloodmoon, heir to the pack, and Lyra Ashwood, the Omega who saved him. There had been objections, of course, council members who insisted that an heir should choose a mate of higher rank, traditionalists who claimed that null wolves were servants, not partners, political advisors who argued that the match would make Bloodmoon look weak to other packs. Alpha Aldrich had silenced them all with a single declaration: "My son has proven his strength, and anyone who thinks his choice of mate is weakness is welcome to challenge him directly." No one had taken him up on that offer, because Rowan, free from his curse, had become everything the pack had hoped for: strong, confident, and capable of leadership in ways that went beyond mere dominance. And Lyra, her white wolf finally fully awakened, had become a force to be reckoned with. She served not just as Rowan's mate, but as his advisor, his balance, and his partner in leading the pack towards a future where strength was measured in more than just power. Now standing before the assembled pack with Rowan at her side, Lyra felt peace in a way she'd never thought possible. "I was told my whole life that I was broken," Lyra said, addressing the pack as tradition demanded, "that my dormant wolf made me weak, useless, beneath notice. But the truth is, I was never broken. I was waiting for the one wolf who needed me as much as I needed him." She turned to Rowan, who looked at her with such love it made her breath catch. "Rowan showed me that being different doesn't mean being damaged, that the things we think make us weak can actually be our greatest strengths. And together we're going to prove to this pack and every pack in the territories that true power comes not from standing alone, but from standing together." Rowan took her hands, his wolf resonating with hers in perfect harmony. "I spent years believing I was a monster," he said, "too dangerous, too unstable, too broken to ever lead or love. But Lyra saw past all of that to who I really was. She didn't try to fix me or change me. She simply stood beside me and showed me how to be whole." He pulled out a ceremonial band, the mark of a mating bond recognized by the pack. "Before this pack, before the moon, before the spirits of our ancestors, I claim you as my mate. Not because you're my balance or my protector, but because you're the other half of my soul." "And I claim you," Lyra said, taking her own band from the attending elder, "not because fate or magic or duty demands it, but because I choose you, today and every day after." They exchanged the bands as the pack howled their approval, and when they kissed, sealing the bond that had been forming since the moment they met, Lyra felt her wolf sing with joy. Later, in the privacy of their chambers, Rowan held Lyra close and whispered, "Do you ever regret it, bonding with me? You could have had a different life. I have exactly the life I want, with exactly the wolf I want. Stop overthinking it." Rowan laughed, the sound free and genuine in a way it never would have been before her. "Yes, my Luna. That's yes, my Luna who can still pin you in combat, thank you very much." "Once," Rowan protested. "You pinned me once, and I was distracted by my devastating beauty and charm," Lyra finished, grinning. "I know." They fell into comfortable banter, into the ease that came from knowing each other completely, and as the moon rose over Bloodmoon territory, two wolves who had been called broken found themselves more whole than either had ever dreamed possible. Because sometimes the most powerful bonds form between the most unlikely pairs. Sometimes the strongest alphas need to be saved by the quietest omegas. And sometimes what the world calls broken is simply waiting to become whole in someone else's arms. Thank you for listening to The Broken Omega's Prince. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and check out our other werewolf romance audiobooks. Remember, true strength isn't about standing alone, but about finding the courage to stand together. Until next time.